You can be doing all the right things to age better and still feel like something's missing. And today, we're going to talk about it. Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara, and this is Age Better. You know, most of the episodes of Age Better focus on the physical side of aging better. You know, like the best ways to stay strong and mobile and healthy and independent. But more and more, I'm hearing from women who want something else too. They want to know how to feel better, how to deal with change and loss, pain and worry, and all the things that can show up in this chapter of life, right along with all the good stuff, and still find joy. My guest today is Dr. Kerry Burnight, a leading gerontologist. In fact, she's known as America's gerontologist and author of Joyspan, the art and science of thriving in life's second half. In this episode, we talk about what Joyspan is, how it differs from happiness, and why it's such an important part of aging better, and how if you want a longer health span and lifespan, you really need to focus on joy. We also talk about how it can be hard sometimes to find joy. The reality is life can be hard. But Dr. Burnight shares practical ways to build more joy no matter what life is throwing at you. So you'll find links in the show notes to Dr. Burnight, her book, Joyspan, and more helpful information. And please keep your ideas for future episodes and guests coming along. You can always reach me at agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or on social media. And hey, if you haven't checked out my Age Better Cheat Sheet newsletter on Substack, I really think you should. There will be a link in the show notes, so check it out. Okay, everyone, get ready to age better. Dr. Burnight, welcome to Age Better.
I am delighted because this is a podcast I listen to all the time. And
Yay!
I absolutely love what you're doing. And I always learn from you. And it feels like a real honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. And I know how busy you've been. Not only are you teaching classes, but you had this incredible Time magazine article. And then very recently, you were on the Dr. Mary Claire Haver podcast, Unpause, which I love. We all love. We love her. We love the message that she has out there about menopause and so on and so forth. So we're very grateful to her. But it was a wonderful conversation that the two of you had. And then, of course, the highlight is your incredible book, Joyspan. I love this book so much. It really spoke to me because, as I was telling you before we started recording this episode, Dr. Burnight, I do tend to focus my episodes more on the physical aspect of health span and longevity. I really do. I'll bring in cardiologists and bone health specialists, and that's more of my focal point. But recently, I've been thinking I need to really focus more on how people are feeling. You know why? Because I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that more and more. And I'm in my 60s. I'm actually going to be turning 70 at the end of this year, as everybody already knows. I've already told you guys already. I know you know. But I'm finding that people in this age range they really want to know about the physical. They want to know about the best exercises. Yeah, of course they do. But they really are feeling things for the first time. And they're not sure what to do about it. So that's really what I want to focus on today. We're going to focus on joy and how to embrace it, how to find it if we need to find it, how to make it a bigger part of our lives, because it is so important.
I'm so grateful. I absolutely agree. These things are in tandem. And we want to live a long time. We want to be in the greatest physical and cognitive health. And while we're doing this, the quality of our long lives is something that matters and something that we can do something about. We can proactively increase this quality of life. And it is exciting. And I love that you're focusing on that.
I really am. I really am. For myself, too. I always find that whatever I do, whether I write something, write a book even, or have a podcast episode, invite a guest, it's really more because I want to know. I want to know. And I know I'm no different than anybody else. I am a true stand-in for my audience. So I know this is going to be an important conversation for them to hear. But before we begin and really dive deep, just explain to us. I mean, your book is called Joyspan. You talk about this term a lot. You coined it, which is amazing. And we do talk about Healthspan. What is Joyspan? And I know Dr. Mary Claire Haver's episode was called The Missing Piece of the Puzzle for Longevity. That's kind of it. But explain to us, what is Joyspan?
Yes. So I didn't start out on the joy path because as a gerontologist 35 years ago, I dug into suffering and I created with my colleague this elder abuse forensic center. And it was so much suffering, so much loneliness, so much indignity and humiliation. So I was crying every day on my way home from work, thinking, is this what our paths are leading to? And it was such important work. But I had this realization one day where I thought, wow, we know from the research that there are things that we can do to fortify people on the inside that actually reduce people ending up with so much suffering, reduces elder abuse. And so because of that, I kind of had this shift of saying, okay, I'm going to do the same kind of thing that we did in elder abuse, but in kind of the positive side of it. So your question, what is Joyspan? We can think of it as well-being. So,
Okay.
and maybe even differentiating joy and happiness, because I too used to just put those together and use them interchangeably.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was going to get to that because I struggle with the definite, even though I've read your book and I understand from what you've said and written, joy comes from within. Happiness is fleeting, like maybe you won the lottery, so you're happy. But does that really bring you joy? But really explain it to us, please.
Yes, and it's people far more qualified than I am. Where I got this distinction was from the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu had a conversation, and they were the ones to really make the distinction between joy and happiness. Both are great. I am all for happy, but happy is often, as we know, it's up and down. And then, gosh, you get an awful diagnosis. I'm not happy about that. I don't want that. Joy, you can think of it more as the American Psychological Association defines it as well-being and satisfaction. So when I think of it as something that we can maintain even with grief, even with the very real, very hard parts about getting older. And so when I thought about it that way, I thought about the name Well-Being Span, but that was simply not catchy at all. And then I tried with my patients Well Span, and this lovely woman said, "Are you saying wealth span?"
We like that too.
And people do use that, and that's great. But what I was trying to get at was, so when I tried Joyspan and tried to understand it as not toxic positivity, not everything's okay, pretend it, but in fact, something that I even think of it like, how a cloudy day can feel so dark and there's all these clouds. But interestingly, when you go up in an airplane, the sun is actually still up there. You just can't see it because of the clouds.
Yeah.
I think joy kind of like that, whereas joy could be there. Joy is like the sun is there, and finding ways amid the clouds and heartbreak and very real part of growing older that we can tap into that using science. And that to me feels really hopeful.
Meaning you can tap into the science and you can actually practice joy to
Yes.
find it and expand it in your life.
You can tap into the joy that is within you. And sometimes, often we go, I don't feel it at all. but it is actually inside of us. And so the analogy that I use is with our physical bodies, we know that we do little things every day and then we notice change. But you don't lift up a weight and do one and then think, well, that didn't work. It's by doing it consistently. So what we're talking about today about Joyspan is internal. Like we're turning our attention to the internal parts. And there are practices, joy practices, that you can implement every day. And we'll get into just what they are. But by doing these small, seemingly insignificant practices, science shows it puts you on a different path to a greater well-being, a greater quality of life. And that reduces suffering, and that is therefore a worthy goal.
Oh, it's a very worthy goal, a goal indeed. And I'm just trying to really still decide, like, for example, I'm a runner and everyone's heard this before. And I started running at 50 and then I started running marathons and I really enjoy it. I love everything about it, the training, the camaraderie. And then I had an injury that kind of morphed into some knee arthritis, and that's chronic. The injury healed, the arthritis is there.
Yes.
And I had to curtail, and it made me very unhappy. I'm going to use terms happy, unhappy, joyful, not so joyful, and it made me very unhappy until I figured out that I just had to reassess and tweak. Do you know what I mean? So instead of running, I just started walking more and speed walking, and I'm doing races again. So I didn't have to forego doing races. I just had to change how I did it. And that made me happy. But also it gave me some, like, so when I do the races, it brings me joy. So I'm still personally a little confused about the difference because I find myself personally a rather joyful person just when I wake up in the morning. Like that's who I popped out that way, which leads me to a question I'm really curious about. Like, what does the science say? What does your research say? What have you seen? Is it easier for certain people to find the joy and practice the joy and extend their joy span than for others?
Yes, it is easier for some people. And yet it is available to everyone. So some people, you, me, have kind of an aptitude that maybe our dispositions, our upbringing, the fact that we are quite fortunate to have support and loving relationships. So it's not a level playing field.
Correct.
But if it was just the case that it was just 100% kind of that part of it, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. So unlike something like height or hair color, the fact that we have seen that people who start with a low baseline of not feeling joy, a disposition, I have seen numerous people start with a certain place of saying, I feel neither happy nor joyful, and I don't like getting older, and I don't have energy in the morning.
We all know those people too. Yeah. I mean, I know some.
For the honesty, right? I think it's important to share these kinds of things.
That's true.
And if it was the case that there was nothing you could do about it, you would say, okay, but there is actually still a choice. But here's an important caveat. You actually have to want to make that choice. So if you are feeling awful and thinking, I don't want to do anything differently, I want to be in this misery or suffering, let me be. That's their choice. And yet another person isn't going to force anybody else into it. So to
Right.
experience more joy, you actually need to decide that's something that you want. So that is the threshold of step one of saying, well, yes, I don't feel good right now in any way, but I want to feel better. I don't want to continue in the next 30 or 40 years of suffering. I would like to do some research-based things that are going to put me on a different path. The good news is the science shows that you can.
Yeah, that is very good news. Let's talk specifically again about this particular demographic. My audience, 50 and over, I think even more in their 60s now because they've been following me around for a while. So they're like where I am. And things really do change in your 60s. Even I'm a little shocked. More aches and pains. I just, back in my 50s, when I said, I'm doing everything right, I'm going to kind of slide right into my 60s and possibly 70s. Do you know what I mean? Without
Yes.
any change. And that's not true.
Correct.
In addition to that, but I've been very fortunate. I mean, my little knee arthritis is manageable at the moment. But do you know what I mean? But other women that I speak with, that I know of, that I've listened to, are experiencing other things as well. Not only some chronic pain, but loss, right? Loss of parents, perhaps.
Yes. Or
Loss of,
partners, like,
loss of partners, divorce, possibly. I
yes.
mean, we all know about the silver tsunami divorce. And the job changes. I mean, even if it's your decision to retire or leave your company, even if you go off and do something, it's still a big change. Kids leaving, really leaving. I mean, at this point, they're very adult, right? When you're in your 60s. So much change going on in this time period, in this decade, that I just really want to focus on that. Let's help this demographic, me included, to find that joy. So we start where we are. You said the kind of that point of entry, if I heard you, is to make the choice that you want to find joy. Then what?
Yes. And I have had such a privilege of having a front row seat in thousands of people traveling into their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s. And because of that, you watch and you watch carefully. And so as a gerontologist, I actually never say, oh, aging gracefully. And the reason that I don't is I've never seen anyone have it all be graceful because it is by nature hard. And into every life that I have ever seen, things that are unexpected, things that are unwanted, and things that are darn hard come your way. And you didn't expect that. And so to think that, oh, if I just do everything, quote, right, I'm going to somehow avoid, I've never seen that happen.
No, it's not real.
No, it isn't real. You're going to have stuff that you think, what? I thought that I would maybe have, after we retired, time to travel with my husband, and my husband passed away unexpectedly. Or conversely, I exercised every day. I did all the stuff and ran marathons and drank my green juice. And then I have this cancer diagnosis. Then I've lost my vision to macular degeneration. Then my adult daughter maybe was killed suddenly, or in my case, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. That is normal. And it's kind of hard to get our minds around, but it's actually quite healthy. And I actually have people that I work with start at the end of, we are definitely, let's start with just one thing we know. We are for sure going to die. I promise you that. You can do all the stuff and you are still going to die. And before you do, I almost can promise you that there's going to be some rough stuff. And so you recognizing that and knowing like things are going to come and it's going to be how I carry those things, that's going to impact my Joyspan. And the word that you used already, and it's one of the 4 pillars of the Joyspan matrix, is adapt. And adapt is a verb because it takes the decision and it takes effort. And for you, like in the beginning, we rage against it. And I'm all for that. I have had plenty of times crying my head off in my garage by myself when our daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor because I thought, this isn't right. This isn't how it's supposed to go. But after I felt the feelings and recognized that this is, there then comes some acceptance to say, I don't like it that I have this diagnosis, or that I lost my partner, or that I lost my best friend, or that I can't hear, or that I got an unthinkable ALS diagnosis or something. But after I've felt it, to have some acceptance is a step in the direction that's going to enable us to carry that thing in a way that it could be, let's be very optimistic and say we have 40 years left. I can either carry that stuff and that increasing stuff with utter suffering and not adapting to it and being pissed off about this is my life, or I can say, okay, I got these things. How can I find a way to walk the remainder of this in a way that isn't pure suffering and in fact can have some growth and some beauty in it and some laughter in it and some tears in it that can be joy.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about your mom for a minute because she is, in my mind, like the epitome of a joyful older person. She is frequently on your Instagram posts,
Yes.
and she's Betty. We all know her now. We feel like we all know Betty. She's beautiful, spry. She has friends, 97. And I cannot wait when I turn on Instagram just to kind of scroll when I'm taking a break. I'm hoping that there is another Betty Instagram post waiting for me. And there usually is, so thank you for that. But let's talk about her. You told me a few times that she didn't start out as a joyful person, but tell us about her.
So my mom would be the first to say that she wasn't always tapping into joy. And she, like all of us, got caught up in worry and led to anxiety and to the social pressure of all the keeping up with the Jones kind of thing that kept her from disappointment and judgment. And it was kind of a certain path. And kind of together, as I found this research of saying, oh my gosh, Mom, did you know that this little practice here, and I'll tell your listeners, could sort of change your outlook in your life? And she, to her credit, said, I'll give it a try. And so I'll give you one as an example, but she tried it and that changed. And then year after year, probably starting in her late 70s or so, it put her on a really different path by choice and by work.
And with some help from her daughter.
Well, together, learned together. And the reason I film her is because she lets me. But she isn't, people think, oh, she is such an anomaly. Actually, there are millions of people in the world who are doing this. It doesn't require you to be affluent. It doesn't require you to look a certain way. You don't need to be in perfect physical health because it's an inside job. And so when this Instagram is _gerontologist. And when you first see her, you would think, wow, lucky genes. But we know that genes is only 25% or less of the variance. So it's not that. Then you think, well, she hasn't any health problems. Actually, she has congestive heart failure, full body osteoarthritis that's incredibly painful, knees replaced, hips replaced multiple times, amazing scoliosis and high blood pressure and irritable bowel syndrome. So there is a lot of diarrhea. And that is normal.
Yeah, that is normal. That is. And that's not stopping her from finding joy, is your very big point, right?
Yes. And I want to, and I'm going to get to a point where I can not just focus on her, but on so many different people, men and people in different parts of the world, to show that it isn't, as much as I love that people are seeing Betty. Yes, that is one example. There are so many examples. And in fact, we are the examples. That's how we're going to change the narrative. And your incredibly important work and your books and your AARP writing and this podcast is part of that movement where we say we can do older better. And we're going to share the resources and all come together and step into it to no longer accept the humiliating and degrading and ageist paternalistic way that we have traditionally approached aging.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could have a whole podcast episode just focused on that, the internal ageism that we've
Yes.
been taught. I mean, there's no way around. I mean, we've been taught this since we were born to look upon elderly people, even people who are over 40. I
Yes.
mean, remember back in my day, oh, don't trust anyone over 30. I mean,
Yes. And now we're like 30's baby.
it was just really very funny to think back on that. But what I wanted, before we move on to that, I did want to hear, what is that one practice that you told your mom to do that she did do when she was in her late 70s that you wanted to share with the audience? What is it?
Okay, so there are multiple joy practices, and this is the one that we happened to do first with my mom back in her 70s. So humans, when we wake up, we do a thing. We're laying in bed, and then you go, oh, good. The water heater isn't working. My daughter's getting a divorce. Gosh, my knee hurts right now. Oh, my dog smells so bad, and my husband is breathing so loud. Like, you are
Negatives.
bringing attention to the negatives. And we do that. But we don't have to do that. And in fact, the way that the brain works is what you call attention to is what you see more of. So my mom's first step to a different path was simply, we made a thing where when she lies in bed, the very first thing, she doesn't even open her eyes, and I do the same thing, is I put down on a finger things that I am grateful for / things that are right as opposed to things that are wrong. So today, for example, I thought, oh, this pillow is really comfortable. Oh, I'm happy that my husband is forgiving because I was kind of a crab apple last night, which is true. And I am excited to, I'm grateful today that I'm going to be able to go on a walk. I'm grateful that I get this time with Barbara, who has a podcast I'm so fond of. And to go through and make yourself, and you can repeat them day to day. They can be about a cup of coffee. It could be the healthier child. If, let's say, with like my mom, you have full body pain, we've gotten so she finds something that doesn't hurt. And so she made me laugh the other day where she said, I was in my bed and I thought, well, my nose doesn't hurt.
Oh, I love Betty. Oh my gosh. So she really is searching for that thing. And you do that. And you encourage other people to do that. And I know that wonderful practice is in your book.
Like
And
if
I
we
do
do
that.
it tomorrow, if you're hearing Barbara's voice today, do it tomorrow. Try it out. It doesn't cost anything and it doesn't take any time. But the way that the brain works, the nucleus accumbens, is what you draw attention to is what you see more of. So, for example, if you've ever purchased a new car, let's say you got a Toyota Corolla, then when you get on the road, you see Toyota Corollas everywhere because that's how our brain works. So when you draw attention to these things that are right, you see more of what is right. And some people write them down, and actually my mom also has taken to writing them down, and she has ordered them in a blank book, and she's at 632. She'll write them down, and then some days she'll flip through it. And it is a science-based practice that actually can change your brain, therefore increasing your joy span.
Yeah, that just makes so much sense to me. So in your book, and the whole philosophy of Joyspan is these 4 pillars. You mentioned one, to adapt. We talked about it being like reassess and tweak, adapt. Change is coming. Change is coming. Change is happening, guys. Do not think it is not. It is. So you just accept that acceptance. And like, what are the others?
Yes, there are 4 of them. And my dream when I wrote the book, when I was getting into the research for years and years, is that it was going to be such a beautiful acronym. And we would just have this catchy acronym. And then one day I was in a coffee shop writing, and I thought, it is simply the words that it is. And darn it all. But there is a way to remember it. So there are 4 pillars, 4 elements of the Joyspan matrix. It starts with a G and ends with a G. So we got that. Okay, G's on the side. And then in the inside is CA. I happen to be from California. So if people might remember that this Joyspan gal was from California, maybe it would help people remember. So GCAG. The first G is grow. Research shows that people who have longer joy spans are people who have decided to continue to grow as a person, because self-development and continued forcing oneself to do hard things, or what my mom calls keep on keeping on, is something that it differentiates people who enjoy their long lives.
Yes. I just want to stop there for 1 second. That is so important to me that we get that message out. All of them are important, but this one is so important because I have seen, and it does go back to the physical first. I'm going to make this connection and how it then kind of will stop their growth. If they're feeling pain, if there is arthritis in the knee, let's say, and they think, oh, it hurts if I'm going to walk or do some exercise, they're not going to do it. And little by little by little, the fullness of their life is being chipped away, and it gets smaller and more narrow, and growth, it's going in the opposite direction. Like they're not growing because they're physically uncomfortable, and they're just like their world is kind of closing in. They're not getting out as much. They're not seeing people as often. I know connection isn't, which we'll get to, super important. And that's really important. If there is some physical pain, figure out why it's happening. Get it fixed. Do what you can. Get physical therapy. Try it so that it doesn't stop you from wanting to grow your world bigger, not let it shrink and become narrow and smaller. That's so important to me.
That is very well articulated. And in all of these principles, the external strength and the internal strength, we can use them as examples for one another because they are actually quite similar, right? So that when we stop pushing ourselves physically, you're right, we become fragile and ultimately frail.
Fragile and frail.
And internally, that's the same case, right?
Yeah.
So we become fragile and frail. We contract by thinking, I can't do that. That ship has sailed. I'm too old for that.
With going back to that internal ageism, right?
Yes.
Yeah, about yourself.
And every one of us has it. And the reason that we all have that internal ageism is because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And it's not going anywhere because it's so lucrative. So it will require each of us to be countercultural inside of ourselves. And it's not going to come from somebody else saying, aha, I see that. No, it has to come from ourselves of saying, I reject that saying that it's too late, that I'm too old, that I can't learn new things, do new things, continue to exercise anyway in a different way. So it's this mind that says, in the book I write, a decline aging mindset is the norm. And it's so perfect because it spells out damn decline aging mindset. So the damn mindset is we consciously reject that because it isn't true. Not everything declines. And we choose a growth aging mindset. And you can put an E on the end, game. Like we're going to stay in the game.
We're going to stay in the game. That's right. That's right. Do you see a theme here? I do. The theme I'm seeing is that so much of this is up to us. Even the joy, choosing joy that comes from within. Right? Choosing to get rid of that ageism that is in you. No one's going to do this for you, everyone.
You know who really shook me awake was Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, I was thinking about him.
Yes.
When thinking about you and this, but yes, please continue.
Yes. So as many of your listeners know, Viktor Frankl was a physician, and he was imprisoned in a concentration camp. So the most suffering imaginable. And what he wrote when he got out was, and it's in Man's Search for Meaning. So if people are looking to read that, if you haven't yet, in Man's Search for Meaning, he said, regardless of circumstance, we can maintain our internal freedom, our spiritual freedom. We still have a choice on how to respond to what life gives us. And when I read it, I was going through something very hard with my brother's leukemia. And I remember thinking, if he could still have a choice, doesn't that mean that we all still have a choice? And that the hard thing to do is to, like you said, is a little bit tough love on ourselves of saying, yes, this is hard, and please step up and step into your life, even though it's hard.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was so perfectly said. And that really resonated with me. And I'm sure it resonated with everyone. And everyone, I will put a link in the show notes to the book, just in case you never read it or if you want to reread it, which I think I do too, because of course I read it, but decades ago. I want to reread it. I do.
And he thought of it in his head when he was in the concentration camp. And so he kept, and then of course you didn't have a pen or paper to write, but then when he got out, it just poured out of him. In just a matter of days, he wrote that whole book. And it's not long, but it has really stood the test of time.
It really has. Yeah, it really, really has. Everybody should read that. So, okay, so growth. So we agree. Growth, people, and we've seen it, their worlds can get smaller if they allow it, if they don't take these steps that we were just talking about. So what are some of the other pillars that you want to cover?
So if you think about the order, because I've given people this.
Oh, yes, the order.
Yes, we know that the next letter is C. So C is for connect. The research consistently shows us that in order to enjoy our 100-year lives, it is critical that we are very proactive in connecting with other humans. And what we can't do is we can't go on autopilot with our friendships. We want to say, oh, I've had this friend from high school, this friend in being a mom, this friend from when I turned 70 or 80. The problem with autopilot is that when you live a long time, people pass away, they move away, they get cognitive impairment. So the people who have enough connection to sustain them through the hardship of life are people who, I call it, be that friend. And it's the friend who picks up the phone, who makes the plans, who notices their next door neighbor is maybe driving to chemo and offers, may I drive you to chemo? The one who says, oh gosh, I think it's been 5 years since your dad passed away. I remember it was at Christmas time. Would you want to go grab a coffee and tell stories about your dad? Right? The people that come to me and say, I am lonely, nobody calls me, I have nothing to look forward to, I'm all alone. I listen and then I say, tell me about your outreach efforts. And invariably, then there's a quiet. And they say, well, I'm not the one who makes the plan. And I'm like, aha.
There you go. Yeah. So connected to growth, too.
Yes.
Those two are so connected.
Yes.
Really just incredible to me. And it's like, that's such a big concern of mine because I get very worried. I get very worried about everybody, like my audience or people who aren't in my audience, but this demographic, I get very concerned that's happening, that they won't be that person. They won't take the initiative and pick up that phone or send that email or send that, whatever it takes, or knock on that door. And their world will get smaller.
It will by default. So if we don't jump in the grow part, it will get, and our friendships will. And so I think of it like a practice, a joy practice for connect is if you imagine a bullseye. And so in the center of the bullseye is you. So here's Barbara. And then outside there's room for about 5 people and then 10 people and then 20 people. And you can actually, on a piece of paper, write in the names of who are the 5 people that I would call in the middle of the night if I really needed some help or I had some terrible diarrhea and I needed to go to the hospital or something. And to kind of take inventory in what does my social portfolio look like? And if you're honest, you'll find, as I have, gosh, I don't really have anybody right now because we've all moved away or we've kind of lost touch since our kids left the house. And then you work on it. Then you say, well, right now I really only have, let's say, one other person that I'm only kind of close with. Well, good. Then you can write the name of somebody that you would like to be close with, or you can be open of like, I've got a spot available. And you then start little conversations. So for example, when you go to the supermarket, you see the same person over and over at the checkout stand. You might say to them, I realized that we never really introduced ourselves. I'm Kerry. And that person might say, oh, I'm Susan. Great. Then you come back a few days later. Hi, Susan. How are you? So it's these little incremental things. And I have seen people, once they've decided to proactively foster connection the same way we foster our muscles, say, oh my gosh, after half a year or something, I said, hey, Susan, when you get off, do you want to grab a cup of coffee? We've become fast friends. So friends are everywhere, future friends, and everybody's lonely. So therefore, putting yourself out there and actually be willing to kind of kiss a lot of frogs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so important. And I just want to say that I think it's really important that people start doing this early. Like if you're in your 60s, like start doing this now. Don't wait until you in your 80s and 90s and feeling looking around and going, "Oh my gosh, I'm really alone now." That no, this is not a good idea. I mean, it's never too late. Dr. Burnight, I know we agree with that, but it's better to get started earlier. I really do think the 60s are a best if still working, kind of solidify your work friends and then if you're not working, if you're retiring or kind of moving into that direction, start to get those people in your little circle, in your little bullseye. I mean, it's just, you have to take the initiative.
Absolutely.
I really believe that. No one's going to do it for you.
Nobody is. And if you, like my mom, I'd say I would say 99.9% of her friends have passed away. So had she not been very proactive in making new friends, she would be quite alone. And had she not really stopped judging adult children and grandchildren and started deciding to take an interest and foster those friendships in a different way, she wouldn't have had the closeness of her family either. So just like in our physical health, people sometimes say, well, when should I start this? It's the same thing of like saying, when should I start cardiovascular health? As young as 10 years old.
Yeah. And then never stop. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing too. Nothing in life is a one-off. I don't know of anything that's worthwhile doing that is a one-off. You do it and then you do it again and you keep on doing it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And you fall and you get up, and we'll all have times where we'll think, I'm going to be bold and invite somebody to something. And then they don't even text you back, or, or you
Don't
find
let that stop you.
yeah, or that a group of people that you're friends with, you see a picture and they all went somewhere and they didn't invite you. That's part of the human experience too. But don't let those setbacks prevent you from knowing that your efforts will make a difference in connection, therefore in Joyspan.
Absolutely. So what's the next one?
Okay.
Is A.
Oh, exactly. Everybody's thinking as you're driving or on a walk listening to this podcast, you're like, I know it's A. So and that is adapt. So we've had grow, we've had connect, and now we're talking about adapt, which is something Barbara hit on immediately, which was the physical part of it, of going, I love this so much, and now I no longer can do it as a result of these physical changes. How then am I going to adapt to this? And so in the same way that we apply that to our physical, we need to apply that to all aspects of our internal life and our internal strength. So an example would be one that was personal to me. I had my retinas detached. And so I lost my vision entirely in one eye and then mostly in the other eye. And so there was a time that I couldn't drive. It was in my 50s. I couldn't drive. I couldn't really use my phone. I was fumbling around the house. I couldn't walk the dog. Shopping was a problem.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was like, okay, sister, you better practice what you preach. So I mourned it. I cried and I did a gajillion surgeries. But also, I did force myself to adapt because I had read in the literature that that is the way to make the decision to say, listen, you can hear, you can learn to get around your house quite well. But you have so many things like you got legs and arms and you can share with people. So we had got an easy way for me to use the phone with that they changed it. So it was just, I could see really, really big things. So I could press a button and call and find ways to adapt to this or adapt to not having your partner or adapt to the fact that, man, I used to love going for a walk and now I'm in a wheelchair. How can I find a way to find the joy with this new reality? Because adapting is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so necessary. Change will happen. We said that already several times in this conversation. Change will happen. Do not think it will not. It will. And so adapting is going, and some of it might be great change, right? Great change.
Yes,
But some of it's not going to be so great. Some of
exactly.
it just
I
won't be.
love that you
It
say
can be
that.
very hard.
That's exactly right, because there are surprisingly great things. Like I've talked to a lot of people in their 90s who said, my best friend of my life, actually, I met in my 90s. And that was, I thought, I hadn't thought about that, some of my people I love, that I'm going to love so much I don't know yet. I thought that was encouraging. So we're now in the home stretch of the final letter, which everybody, G. And so that is give. And that is a verb because that too takes, number
It's
one,
so
a
important.
decision to recognize that if you are alive, you have something to give, and that we're not going to let this ageist society tell us that we don't have things to give. And what propels you is to recognize what gets better as you get older. So I'm going to briefly tell you things that get better that when you get older that nobody publicizes because it's not anti-aging, fear-based stuff. So we don't care as much what other people think about us. And that can be quite liberating in order to step out and do the things because we're not as beholden to what will people think about me. That's one. Another,
Yay.
yay, I know. And it becomes more so and more so, right?
It does. Oh my gosh, everyone.
So
It
you're 90.
does.
I'm not for everyone. I don't care. But then the next one is problem solving gets better. And that's a result of the neurological integration of our left and right hemispheres of our brain. And so we have had a lifetime, let's say in our 90s, of solving problems. And we're able to draw upon that problem solving. But because if we buy into society's thing that just because we don't know the latest technology that we have less to offer, we don't lean into it. And so in the book, I give some really tangible examples of older adults who have solved problems that younger adults simply could not. And if once you recognize that, you are emboldened to trust yourself, to have solutions, to trust people who maybe are your parents or grandparents, that if we could shut up for long enough, that they can come up with wonderful solutions and make us brave enough to offer these problem-solving solutions, because the research shows that with age comes better problem solving.
Another yay. Another round of applause. Yeah.
You need it because you don't hear about it. And then other things are, we have increased humility. And I think that would really benefit society if we, 10,000 of us every single day are turning 65. So if you think about 10,000 people turning 75, 10,000 people then turning 85, the potential for humility and others-centeredness in society could be one of the solutions to society's ills, because I think it's going to counter a trend that has been so all about me, look at me, which isn't healthy for you and it isn't healthy for society. So humility, appreciation for art, music, nature, human connection, the potential for increased depth of spirituality. And that is something. So link it back to give because, first of all, you need to recognize what you possess internally and then make the decision to give it. An example that I will give you is that there is a woman that I know who is in physically very poor health. She's quite contracted. She lives in a skilled nursing facility, but she decided, growth, that she was going to improve her listening. She listened to TED Talks about listening. She listened to an Audible about listening, and she told me, like, I have talked my whole life and I want to become a better listener. Then she implemented those kinds of things, and her give these days is her listening. Every time I go to visit her, there is a crew around her bed talking to her, and she is listening and
Oh, I love
encouraging.
that.
And I thought, listening, I could be a better listener. Surely that could be something that I could decide is my growth. It would help us connect. It could help. I could adapt even if my body is not working. I can still listen. And that could be my give to make people feel truly heard, understood, and not judged. And what a beautiful give listening could be.
That's really beautiful. I love that example. That's a great, we could all, I think, be better listeners and something I know I do try to work on myself. So thank you for that example. Dr. Burnight, so you've been studying this, you've written a book about it, about Joyspan, finding joy, expanding your joy span, and you have a delightful mother, and of course, other people in her age range who are equally delightful and are finding their own joy spans as well, which you said, and hopefully you'll be showing some of them in your Instagram as well. But how has all of this affected you? Not as a gerontologist, but as a daughter, a mother, a partner? How is it like? How have you changed? I mean, you did mention you do start your day in bed thinking of all the things that are good and right, not the things that are bad and wrong. So that's definitely something that you do. What else do you feel has changed for you? Has it? Your view?
It has, because when I got into working with people in their 90s and 100s, and when I got into the studying of what a long life lived with lifespan, healthspan, and joyspan, I realized that I was allowing fear to have way too big of a place in my life. And the fear of the unknown and the fear of what if this happens or that happens, or it was draining me and it was taking away from this limited time that I had on earth. And so little by little with these practices, I felt like leaning into joy was the opposite of fear, of instead of saying, what if, for example, my daughter's brain tumor X, Y, and Z, I'm now saying, based on the older people that I've learned from, what if it is okay? What if the tumor doesn't grow? What if, like, we can lean into the power of hope in the same way that we have let fear stop us from doing things, stop us from exercising when we have a little bit of pain, stop us from thinking that we can knock on our next door neighbor's door or start a book club or a lot of this stuff. So I'd say that's the biggest change, is taking fear off the throne.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's allowed you, that's freed you up to accept more joy. There's no
Yes.
question in my mind because fear is a very powerful thing.
And fear sometimes shows its head with worry. And so I have a lot of people, a lot of women who say, I'm just a worrier. I'm just a worrier. And I think that's giving fear power. And so I think we could say to ourselves, I have worried in the past. I'm growing older and I get to choose, and I'm going to choose when a big worry comes in. I'm going to look at it and say, I'm going to choose to, in addition to you, stupid worry, I'm going to look over here and try to replace it with the thought of this might happen, but also this could happen, right? Like these little practices.
It's a shift in how you think. And by the way, I want to make sure everyone understands that we are not for a second saying this is easy.
No.
Not at all. We're not saying, oh, yeah, of course, come on, it's easy. No, it can be. It really can be. And some days it might be. And some days life can be really hard. That something happened and it's something very hard has happened. It has made you very unhappy. And so it could be harder. So it's a day by day thing. It truly is. But as we said earlier in this conversation, nothing is a one-off. You have to keep on doing it. It's a practice. Life is a practice. And finding joy is a practice. And everyone, we're going to be winding down now. And we're going to get to, just so you know, Dr. Burnight, no guest in 4 years has ever left the studio without answering, what are your top 3 takeaways from our conversation today? So we're going to get to that in 1 second. But everyone, I just want to remind you of Joyspan. If you're looking for that place, like, where do I start? Okay, I hear you. Where do I start, Dr. Burnight and Barbara? I would start right here. I would read the book, make notes, read the book, share the book. Also a good idea. Why not spread the joy? I say spread the joy around you so that everyone's kind of trying to find their own Joyspan as well. And then go, for sure, check out the show notes. The link to the book will be in the show notes, as will be the Instagram account for Dr. Burnight and any other links about her to get more information about Dr. Burnight and the great work that she is doing. And of course, you want to take a look at Betty on that Instagram account. Okay, Dr. Burnight, please share, what are your top 3 takeaways? I mean, we covered so much, but we want people to remember the 3 most important things they should think about.
3 most important. Number 1, reject the lie that aging is all decline. Number 2, decide that you would like to lean into the remaining years that you have, whether you are 43 or 103. And when you decide, my last one is put in the work. Just the way that it's not that comfortable when we're sweaty and doing our physical stuff, it takes work to grow and to connect and to adapt and to give. And in choosing to put the work in, I guarantee you, you're going to change the quality of your longevity.
Yeah. I just thank you so much for the work that you've been doing, continue to do, the classes that you teach, what you write, what you post. It's all motivational, but it also makes just so much sense to me. Because you're right, we have limited amount of time, everyone.
I would say to your listeners, your Instagram, your podcast, your AARP writing, and your books are exactly in line with what we're talking about. It's research-based. It is based on the lived experience of people way ahead of us in their 90s and 100s. So I point everyone to your work, and I am deeply grateful for what you are doing.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I know everyone listening in did as well. I hope that you'll come back.
To your joy.
Cheers to joy, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: We can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.